Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to my press conference. And it was another decent week for Shorty, even though it didn't really feel like it. I must admit, throughout the weekend, as you guys know, I don't check the scores throughout the weekend. I feel like, I used to as a youngster, but generally that would probably control your mood. If the team wasn't going well, you could crack the shit. So I don't check the scores unless it involves my VC loophole. But you just get the vibe of how players are going anyway, and you hear the odd score from your mates. And look, I must admit, throughout the weekend, I didn't feel like it was going great. A few guys had gone poorly. I knew Moore didn't go great, and Oliver wasn't what I had hoped, and Kelly, and obviously everyone has Dangerfield. But, there were just a few guys that were touch underwhelming. But I've gone up in the rankings again, and that's all you can really ask, I think. So at the moment, I scored 2,266, and that pushed me up about 2,000 spots, and I cracked the top 2,000. So really pleased. If you're a long-time viewer of this channel, this is as well placed as I've been over the first month for probably the last 3 or 4 years. I know. I think it was probably 5 years ago. I had one of my better seasons. But, certainly the last 3 or 4 years, it's much tougher to do well. Just so much media involvement and so many more people doing it and more coverage. It's tougher and tougher to do well. So I'm absolutely rapt to be placed where I'm at the moment. Now, my team, went reasonably well. Whitfield's doing exactly what I thought. I said he'd be the top defender, and he's well on his way. Led back to his solid scoring. Williams, he's probably a watch and see. Wasn't exactly what we had hoped. Collins, doing really well. Poor first week, but he's looking good. Dersma, really consistent type. And so is Clark. He's sort of consistently between 50 and 70. And he'll enjoy a slow but gradual climb up in price. Wilkie was great. Bugger these on my bench, but realistically, there was never a thought of mine to bring him onto the field. But that's going to be absolute gold when he's rising up in price a lot. And that's more important. You want to have the better scores on your field at the moment. But if they're just in your squad, it's great because we just need players making money. Cripps was big. I wanted to loophole Oliver, and I had thought about loopholing Grundy. They were the two, and when Grundy scored 160, I was absolutely spewing. And I would have taken that, clearly. It's funny how it works. In the end, I receive a few more points by having it on Cripps. Neil's just on fire. Crouch played reasonably well, but just a modest score. Libber's doing very nicely. Rockcliffe, very pleased to see that. I would have been quite annoyed if I brought him in and he got knocked out and then returned a poor score. And that just adds a bit to sort of say, look, even though Wines is back, Rocky's still one of the main men in that middle. So that's great. And Walsh just absolutely flying. He's going to be just absolute gold for us. We can hold on to him for a reasonable amount of time. He'll get tired at some point. Those scores will drop off at some point. One would imagine he'd average somewhere in the 80s when the season concludes, but he's going to get up and beyond probably 450. And look, I think he's going to be a real tasty dish. Constable was not flash, but who was for the Cats? As I said, my ruck department looked really good. Dangerfield stunk it up, but he'll be back. Heaney, really, really good. Kelly, he's going to get some attention. He didn't cope with it well, so let's hope for a response on Easter Monday. And Darcy Moore, wasn't his finest display. I didn't see the game, I must admit, but in terms of the score, wasn't the best we're going to see from him. But Willem Drew looked okay, solid score. Parker was frustrating. He spent most of the second quarter off the ground and struggled to get into it. A few big flies and a few almost tackles here and there. But that forward line is proving difficult, You look at that, it's a poor forward line. A lot of people would have had a similar forward line, but I really feel like, it's just tough to know who to even field, Even Drew's getting pushed out a little bit now, so he's not the lock that he was in the first couple, so it's tough. But, look, as I said, I'm stoked to be where I am at this point in time because, as I've often said, I back myself in to trade really well. And history would suggest the way I've gone about it and my team, I haven't been able to pick a good opening team. And I find myself ranked well outside the top 10,000 after the first 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes outside the top 20,000. I'm trying to claw my way back, and I do. I always climb back, and that's down to good trading. But to be in the mix is really important. And that's all I ask. I just want to be in the top 3,000 or 4,000 after the first 6 or 8 weeks. And that's when you can start to trade, and I back myself in to have enough coin to trade well and trade fast. Because you want to fill this team up with premiums as quickly as possible. So what am I thinking? And you got to be thinking already. Trade-wise, probably nothing this week. And I'll talk about Stack and Ross a little bit in the preview, but I'm not big on Stack. He only scored 40 this week. So he's going to only get the one price rise from his 100. And look, I would really like to see how he goes when the big guns come back, but we don't have that option because he's going to go up in price. So I think Ross personally is the one I'd be looking at. He looked really good. And we'll get an opportunity to see how he goes with Martin, and I think Koch will be back. So we'll get a chance to see how he goes. There aren't a stack of options though, so you might just have to take the risk anyway. I understand that. If you need a downgrade, there's no options really. You got to pull the trigger on someone. So there's a couple of thoughts on those guys. But for myself, the only probable thing, I haven't looked deeply into it, but look, Marty Hoare, obviously I traded him out, but you got to assess what is a trade worth. I'm not sure about his job security, but there would be a fleeting thought to trade him in for Burgess. Now, Burgess is going nowhere fast. I just don't think he's capable of much more than a 60 or a 70. He'll have the odd game where he, if he keeps his spot, but in terms of a likely scorer, and we saw an 86 from Hoare, and yeah, look, it's not ideal to trade him out and then trade him back, particularly as a rookie who could get dropped. You never know. But the fact is, I want to get coin and I want to get it quickly. So I'll see what the teams bring and we'll see what we do there. But I'm already thinking, I've got my eyes set on Fife already, likely to come back this week. That means he'll drop in price in rounds 5 and 6, and I'll probably want to bring him in round 7. I think Constable is the man. He's the likely fella to probably be at a good price to make that transaction. One would think 2 more price rises from Constable probably gets him up to hopefully 310, 320, all depending how he goes. And Fife, with 2 drops in price, you would imagine he's floating anywhere from 530 to 560. So all I need is probably a touch over 200k. And I've already got 150 in the bank. So that's about what I'm looking at. I'm still trying to get a gauge on who the best forwards are. Devon Smith and Robbie Gray are dropping in price. They might be a couple of guys you look at. But, Travis Boak's on fire. Caleb Daniels looking really consistent. A couple of guys there. I don't think I'll be upgrading the forward line at this point, or at least in the next 3 weeks. I want to latch on a couple of midfielders. Josh Kelly and Cornelio are a couple of guys who I think will be in the wheelhouse soon. And I might be able to have a look at them potentially. But and the back line, Sicily I want to bring in. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but, Fife's the one. He's the one that you've got to make sure you get in because he's going to be as cheap as you could probably envision, given he's not going to score too many 60s and obviously injury affected. So that's a bit of my thought process at the moment. It'll come down to what the teams bob up with, really, and we'll see how we go. But look, I hope you had a good week. I'll be back soon, and I'll be talking more SuperCoach on later in the week. Cheers.